Hello, and welcome to another Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation's Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. I am your host, Michael Kernodle, and today's educator is none other than Dr. Pete Carney, and the topic is soloing over Cherokee. And I know you've been wondering, what are the cheat codes and the ins and outs of being able to solo over this great tune, Cherokee? You know what? You're in the right place. Whether you're a saxophonist or you play keyboards or drums, it doesn't matter. You're a musician. You're going to learn something today. So there's a little feature here called chat. If you have any questions or comments, you can go in there and just type it out. And we'll leave some time near the end where we'll answer them for you. And don't forget, I have to remind everybody, these sessions are free. So please share. We also have an archive of all of our past sessions. You can go check them out at clearwaterjazz.com/education. And this would not be possible without our wonderful sponsors. So please check out those studio archives at clearwaterjazz.com's education outreach section. And that's brought to you by Blue Water Wealth Management at Stewart Partners and Duke Energy, as well as the Young Lions podcast available wherever you stream. And that's brought to you by our friends at MarineMax Clearwater. Just search Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. I mean, where do I start? Dr. Carney's given us so many great sessions, and you can go back in the archives and check them out. But if you don't know him, he's the director of jazz studies at State College of Florida in Bradenton, an awesome, amazing musician. I mean, he has students all over the country, all over the world now. They're out playing, and he's doing the same. You can check him out on some TED Talks. He released a book, Interactive Listening, which was chosen by Apple as the editor's choice. And you can find him throughout Tampa Bay and throughout the whole country playing. But we're not going to delay any because I know you want to get these great tips. So, Dr. Carney, the stage is all yours.
All right, Mike, thanks for having me. It's fun to be back. I like doing these workshops, and today I wanted to talk about Cherokee. It's a great jam session tune. It's a lot of times people kind of get overcrowded in their brain about how to play over Cherokee. So what I would say is I wanted to show you some things today that'll help you keep it simple. There are complex ways to play over Cherokee, but I find that if it's a jam session and you're playing this song as fast as hell, you have to find simple ways to play. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I had some great students that came in and have gone on to do great things, and they were stumbled by this tune because a lot of times when it's printed, it has sort of additional chord changes, or maybe chords that the bass player is playing or the piano player is comping. But as a soloist, in a sense, you want to kind of think of it as like a modal tune. And some people would disagree with me on the terminology here, but if you hang with me, you'll see what I'm getting at, which is that it really kind of shifts in like big movements. And if you follow those big movements, you'll play a nice solo. Whereas if you think of it as chords by the bar, or if you think of it as chords by the bar, you can sort of get stuck playing the same thing over and over again, maybe. All right. So think about it in these bigger spaces allows you to truly improvise more rather than play a repetitive solo. Not that there's anything completely wrong with that. Don't get me wrong, but I do really feel like jazz is best improvised as much as possible. That being said, the only way you get there is by practicing it very slowly and methodically. You should build up material on your solo and then be able to sort of speed that material up. There's no sense in trying to practice Cherokee fast if you can't play anything at a nice, slow or medium tempo. So I'm going to show you how I approach this. And we're going to go through it as a slow tempo. Again, if I'm really learning stuff, I'm always doing a slow tempo. I'm not trying to play fast on something like Cherokee to create new material. Well, a lot of times in a jam session, If it is a fast tempo, you're playing material that is improvised, but it's also stuff that you've built up in a library of slower experiences. All right, so let me just share the screen with you, and we'll kind of get going on ways to get through this song. All right, so I just pulled up a little Cherokee play along here. There's tons of them on YouTube. I don't know who made this one. A visual reel book it's called. All right. So the first thing here is that it's basically in B flat major. Let's say that I'm just really just starting to explore the tune, just kind of warming up to it. I've never played Cherokee before. I might take just my concert B flat major scale and play with that. Right? So the benefit of that is you learn that the key is your friend. Whatever key you're in has it gets a pass in a sense that you can survive tunes when you don't know all the changes on the inside. Okay, it's not obviously not the greatest way to solo, but it is a great way to practice for your ear, because let's say I'm just taking my B flat major scale and I'm playing it over these chords that are changing behind me. It's giving me a chance to use my ear. All right, because if I'm in the key of B flat major, that means that even though these chords are changing, there has to be some connections to the chords that are not B flat major. Okay, and in the case of Cherokee, there are a few notes changing, but of the sort of 7 notes of the B flat major scale, at any given point, at least 2 to 5 of them work pretty well, right? So that's the real benefit. Is in a sense you're learning jazz improvisational ear training, right? I'm just playing my B flat scale over the chords, even though I'm not really acknowledging the chords of the moment. Right. Again, now that's not going to work on the bridge of the tune because it does completely change keys. But the first lesson here in the A section is that B flat is the concert B flat is your friend. Okay. And then you want to, of course, learn the new notes that are changing as the chords move. But there's nothing wrong with understanding that this song comes from a key. And that key, again, is the sort of landlord of this tune. All right. Second thing I would say here, this is what often messes people up. If we look at this chart here, this F7 augmented 7, F7, yeah, this would just messes people up. All right. It's a sort of leading chord that takes us to this F minor here and the B flat 7. But what I would tell you is this, ignore this. For the most part, people don't play it. I would say 80–90% of the time, people don't play it. So what does that mean? That means, I mean, it sounds nice in this track here, but at the same time, generally people think of Cherokee as 2 bars of B flat major. Okay, and then it goes to this F minor 7 to B flat 7, but people also think of the fact that this is really B flat 7 here for 2 bars, because this F minor 7 belongs to this B flat 7, and your tempo is 320 beats a minute. You're going to have to pick a lane in a sense, because your brain wants to improvise. And be creative. You have to, in a sense, take some of these chords out. So I would tell you, first of all, take out this F7, take out this, and just focus on B flat 7 for 2 bars. That gives you a nice sound. Then it goes to E flat major. This is super clear. This is why, going back to the beginning where I said it's sort of like a modal tune. We're blowing off this chord. We're blowing off this chord, generally speaking. Because I just find you can play more interesting stuff. If I play 2 bars of C major, 2 bars of B flat major, 2 bars of B flat 7, I'm usually going to have more room to blaze, in a sense, room to run around with, rather than trying to play these two in here, right? How are you going to play this at 320 and then 2 beats and then this for bar, this for bar? It really does change your concept of improvisation because you're thinking about the primary chord tones. And that's not what this song is really about at this tempo, at a fast tempo that it's usually performed at. It's also a great lesson because what you start to learn that, like, this F minor 7 and this B flat 7, if they're the same family here, and I can get by with just one of them for now, that means that I can do that anytime. Okay, so that it's just kind of, it will be a revelation if you go through it and say, oh man, anytime I have a 2-5, I can just play the 5 or I can just play the 2. It's going to give you just so much. Your style is going to be better at a tempo like this than trying to play both at the 1 bar of each. Okay, so let's go back to the top. I said 2 bars of B flat major, 2 bars of B flat 7. So again, what I'm thinking about here is just B flat major, da, 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 and then B flat 7. Just change one note. Change one note. All right, now E flat major, which is just the 4 chord, and then this A flat 7 is nice, but I like to play this as E flat minor because I had E flat major here. I have E flat minor here, which is the 2 chord of this. It's a great sound. So you get this. And then back to the 3rd of the chord in the next bar. Okay, so if we put that together from the top, we got 2 bars of B flat major, 2 bars of B flat 7, 2 bars of E flat major, 2 bars of E flat minor. Now I'm back to B flat major. All right, and then I don't play this at all. This D, look, if this is B flat major 7, this D minor is already a part of that. See what I mean? It's just the upper part of B flat major. So this is one of this, like we see here and above here, the stumbling blocks of jazz are sometimes diatonic passing chords or sort of redescriptions of the same chord that already happened, the chord of the moment. Okay. So this theoretically it's getting simpler as we take chords out of it, right? So this is 2 bars of B flat major, and then this is the big exception in this tune. I like to think of this as the big 2 chord or 2 dominant. Other people have, a friend of mine had heard a story where a player called it the magic chord. It's the magic chord. It's the 2 dominant because it's always this bright and surprising sound that comes out of the sky, sort of. It just, you can almost play anything on this 2 dominant chord, and it sounds great because it's such a slingshot chord. It'll take you to the 2 that you're looking for, and that's taking you to 2, to the 5, to the 1. All right. So that's the challenge of this tune, is this little symmetry of the A section. So just to sum it up again, if I were to just talk about it in numerals, it would be 1 for 2 bars, da, 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 da. 1 dominant for 2 bars, da, 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 da. 4 major, da, 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 da. 4 minor, back to 1, and then the 2 dominant we call the magic chord, and then 2, 2, 5, 1, back to the top. Okay, that really makes Cherokee a lot of fun to play. And you can hear it, if I just play it without the track even, you can hear Cherokee. Right? That's the beauty of Cherokee, is the simplicity underneath. The way you often see it here is I find to be busy and a little bit overly descriptive, maybe. Yes, the bass player could play these motions. Yes, the piano player could comp these chords. But if you're just trying to solo, this is where I think of it as a sort of a modal tune, gives you a better approach to the A section. Let's talk a little bit more about the A section before we get into the B section, which is, I would say, honestly, more straightforward. Okay. Let's take it to another level on the A section. Let's say it's 2 bars of B flat major and then 2 bars of B flat dominant, but it doesn't work as just that well as just a straight major scale, because you've got a 7-note group. And it just doesn't quite line up, you know? Like if I play my scale straight up, right, then I end up on the 9th of the chord, which is pretty, but in a bebop tune compared to maybe hard bop or Coltrane later on, you don't necessarily sit on the 9ths as much as you would later on in jazz. Like when I say later, we're talking about 5 years later. Okay, we're not talking about 30 years later. But this sort of early Bird era, he would often use like a B flat major bebop scale, which would have both 6s in the scale. So it's a B flat major scale, but you add the F sharp to the scale. Right? Great little sound. You could also, you know, it's not an absolute rule that this is the only way to do it, but it is just a really, I would say, most common practice in terms of scale usage here. So, right, you can start on any chord tone. I'll start on the 5th. Let's start on the root. Start on the 3rd. Right, I didn't play the same shape each time. The point being, it's not like you have to play an arpeggio and then a scale down, or you have to, you know, go straight up a scale. That can be a useful way to practice early on, but I would also say it's kind of limiting. I find it to be, at this point, more fun to say, okay, I'm going to generally start on a chord tone and use this major bebop scale concept, but it doesn't have to be an absolute scale or arpeggio, like, you know, rule number 1 or 2, like we might have done in the earlier sessions. So think about starting on 1, 3, 5, or 7. And then just making up an idea from that gets you to the next chord. So let's say I pick the root. Right, and that wasn't like a great performance, so then I would practice this again. Right, takes me really elegantly down to the dominant 7, which is what I'm looking for the B flat 7. Okay, Coleman Hawkins. Well, this quote came from Barry Harris. He was talking to Coleman Hawkins, and Coleman Hawkins said, Coleman Hawkins said, I don't play chords, I play movement. I play movement, not chords. So in this case, what I was just playing is the movement of the A natural in the B flat major chord turning into A flat. That's the beauty of the Cherokee motion here, is that you have an A turning into an A flat. Right? But the way I just played it is kind of hokey, like In the Mood or something like that. But you again, but the idea of jazz and bebop is to still show the motion of the chord, but like Coleman Hawkins said, I'm showing the movement. I'm showing the movement of the A to A flat. So let's find a more elegant way to show A turning into A flat. So right there, I showed the A in 2 octaves. That was, a very scaled up version of showing you the motion, right? So I showed you the A in both octaves, and I showed you the A flat in both octaves, so that you hear it twice. It's like super emphasized. It doesn't have to be that complicated. You could go with something like, right? Now we've got some riff happening. We have some jazz happening, not because I played random notes, right? But I played notes that were now new, that A becoming A flat over the B flat 7. That's a lot more interesting than sort of blowing off the chord. Let's say, for example, I blow off the chord and I play like a B flat pentatonic over this 8 bars. Sorry, this 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this 4 bars. All right. So I'm going to play B flat major pentatonic, and I don't show you the chord changing to. Right now, it doesn't sound like Cherokee all of a sudden because there's no context. Let's show you the change. Right? So you have to kind of, first of all, simplify this tune a little bit. Take out the things, some of these passing chords, and think of it as 2 bars of B flat major, 2 bars of B flat 7, 2 bars of E flat major, 2 bars of E flat minor, back to the 1 chord, and then the 2 dominant, and then 2, 5 of 2, 2, 5, 1. All right, fun way to play, and you should really experiment with this at a nice tempo, where you're just learning to show the notes that are downshifting. And I say downshifting, I mean that the A turns into an A flat, right? And then let's see, I'm trying to transpose here, and then the G in the E flat major turns into the F sharp, so you get this beautiful sound. Right? It's sort of primal in a sense. I feel like when I play that stuff, it's riff based, but it's also it's like so fundamental that audiences love it because they can understand half steps descending really well. I don't understand why, but I do know that audiences respond to half steps going down even more than half steps going up. There's something about our ear or something going on in our body, but like the change of shape from 440 hertz to 435 hertz, it just does it for our brain. Right? That. It's the most important part of why you're playing Cherokee, is that you're showing your listener this motion, this harmonic motion. Otherwise, you're not really going after Cherokee. Like if you're playing your 5th chorus and you're playing some other stuff, that's great. But most of the time, I feel like you want to hit the song in your 1st chorus because that's where the foundation of your knowledge is expressed, like your sort of foundation of your musical research should sound the most, historical. In when you start your solo, people want to know if you can play Cherokee first before you play other stuff that could be played over Cherokee. And a lot of times, this is a young musician's mistake. I feel like where you come out and play some crazy stuff on your first chorus, but it doesn't mean that you can play Cherokee. It also sets up a hard trap, because once you play some hard outside type of stuff on Cherokee, how do you weave your way back in? It's really hard, I would say. Most of my more successful solos have started from the song and moved outwards, rather than the opposite of trying to start in left field and come back to Cherokee later on. But again, like, I don't want to sound too hard, because jazz is about experimentation, and you do have to try stuff to know what works. But a lot of times our intention might be to start with like something that's a little bit too weird, rather than just playing some nice chordal stuff. So let's go back to the top of this play along track. Again, this is a nice slow one. This is where you're really going to make some progress. Just play some chord tones over this guy. Then next step, I was like, okay, I've played a couple chord tones. It gives me a chance at this tempo to work on lower neighbors. It's a hard thing to do for me. So I like to practice this stuff especially slow, because there's no way I'm going to do it fast. Like, again, if Cherokee was speeded up. Right? It's tricky stuff. I have no chance getting it right later if I can't sort of lock it in at a practice tempo, I would call this. Rehearsal tempo. More chord tones. Now I limited myself to the 4 notes of each chord. Again, 2 bars of each chord, 2 bars, 1 dominant, 4 minor, 1, 2 dominant, and then 2 minor, 5 of 2, 2, 5, 1. I limited myself, and that's a cool place to start from if you want to play something that's more experimental. Like I was sort of ripping on earlier, I'm still being experimental, but I'm being experimental with 4 very primary chord tones, the 4 basic chord tones. You can make up some great stuff with this, and you would hear, for sure, you'd hear, Louis Armstrong's generation do this, where they're playing the 4 notes, but they're playing in them very sophisticated ways. So again, I'm just going to play only 1, 3, 5, or 7. But it gives me the freedom to play them in different octaves or leaps that might be unusual. Can also allow you to be more lyrical just by limiting the language. You find yourself running into Lester Young or Coleman Hawkins, or you find yourself running into people that found the motion of these chords and they just kind of lean on it. One more time. I'm talking about playing lyrically here. You run into that. I ran into that tritone. Oh, there's Coleman Hawkins, or there's Lester Young, or anyway, you see them or tons of players in the Duke Ellington band who would bring out the third and seventh of a chord because it had this tritone color to it. Well, you won't find those if you don't take your time and just limit your vocabulary for a little while. You start to run into people before you that also practice this way. And so when you practice, you get like these messages from the past, like, oh, welcome to the thing I used to practice, Coleman Hawkins like says in your head, sort of, while you all of a sudden discover that tritone. So again, that's how I would practice this. Again, the other approach is that was just the 4 chord tones. Let's go back to, I'm going to play a bebop scale for each of these chords. So for the B flat major, I'm going to add both 6s to the chord, 6s of the scale, or, you can think of it as F, F sharp, G, A, B flat. For the E flat major, I'm going to add both 6s also, and then I'm going to turn it into E flat minor here. And I'm going to add both thirds of the scale to that. So it's E flat, F, F sharp, G to A flat. That takes me back to my B flat major chord, which has a F, F sharp, G, A, B flat on the top of it. I'm going quickly because you could obviously like stop this and kind of suss it out if you want to do it. Then the 2 dominant chord. Yeah, I kind of play this different ways because you can, with the 2 dominant, this C7 here, you can play almost anything on that chord and it'll sound pretty cool. Let me show you that just so you kind of believe me. When we get to this C7, you can play, I'm going to just play some whole tone scales or odd leaps, and almost anything can be pretty cool because it's such a slingshot chord. It's like the most, it's like pivotal dissonance before you get back to the top. Let's check that out. When I get to the C7, it's a unique situation whenever you have that 2 dominant that almost anything sounds good. Right here. Nothing too crazy there. Again, for the B flat major, I just was playing major scale with the added 6. For the dominant chord, I was just adding both 7s to the scale. What else? And then I showed you on the C7, the 2 dominant chord. It kind of takes anything. In a sense, it's like a black hole. You can, and it does happen in a lot of songs. A lot of jazz tunes have a 2 dominant, and it just asks for dissonance. It's like the part where you can say anything. Okay. Let's talk about the bridge for a minute. We didn't get to that. When this song is cranking up and it's really fast, I think of this mostly as C sharp major 7. You can also obviously start here with the 2 chord. I wouldn't say that because of the tempo, I don't play it like 2-5-1. I either kind of pick a dominant chord or pick the 2 chord and then lean on the 1 chord, so that this whole group of notes is the same, but their values change between chords. Okay, so pick pick the C sharp or the F sharp, unless you have sort of practiced some lick that you have played, that you want to outline this chord and then walk down this chord or something. That's fine also, but it just depends on the sort of level of deepness in your improvisation that you want to get to. And what I mean by that is there are some cats that will play a 2 lick here and a 5 lick here and then a 1 lick here. But I prefer to live in the world of improvisation. Okay, so for me, that means that I pick a battle here. I'm going to take one of these chords or the other, and then I'm going to get here. Because for me, it gives me more freedom to think about something I haven't played. Okay. So again, let's start from the bridge. This is all just a big 2-5 to B flat major. And then the best way to think of this is the B flat major turns into B flat minor, and that takes you down to A major. And then here the A major turns into A minor, and that takes you to G major, which turns into G minor, which takes you, would usually take you to the F, but here it takes you to a 2-5 back to B flat major. And the reason I'm encourage you to think of it as these major turning into minor is that your ear will pretty quickly learn to recognize that. The more you play music, this happens a lot. Mahler did it a lot, and jazz did it a lot after him, where the giant major chord turns into minor without rhyme or reason. Okay, it doesn't really. This is where the sort of rules of theory to me kind of run out, because you learn about theory and everything's supposed to have a reason, but with jazz the reasons have become a little sluggish, and the beauty of the chords changing is the new reason why things happen. So the contrast of major becoming minor, it just becomes a new governing rule of the 20th century. Okay, so the other benefit here is you have to be on your toes when this tune is cooking, right? So you can also think of it as just 4 bars of B flat major, 4 bars of A major, 4 bars of G major, and then basically 4 bars of F major turning into F dominant back to 1. You know what I mean? Let's check that out a little bit. I'm just going to play these as major scales. I'm just going to play the major scales here. Major with an added 6, so it's a major bebop scale. Bridge here. B flat major. Wait, not yet. Here we go. even at that slow tempo, I'm still kind of careful. Okay, I still feel like I have to be on my toes. So the point being, these simple ways to get through Cherokee are, I think they're the way that a lot of people think about it. It's not, I didn't myself this. Just think of it as B flat major. Major. Right? Now let's take it back just a step. Make it just a little bit harder, and think of it as the 2 chord going to the 1 chord. So instead of just thinking about these as major chords, I'm going to think about this 2 for 2 bars, and then it resolves into the B major for 2 bars. I'm going to think about this 2 chord, and it resolves to the major. This 2 chord resolves to the major. This 2 chord resolves to the dominant. So I'm looking for chord tones, but I'm trying to stay away from the root of the major chord, because that would probably be kind of a dull note to end up on. The major 7th is a beautiful note to hit the major chord with. What else? I said I was thinking of it as 2 chords going to the 1, but I still find myself kind of adding that 5 chord a little bit. So that they do become, they're symbiotic. So when you remember the 2 chord, a lot of times you'll kind of remember the 5 chord as a part of that, in a sense, and you kind of put those together, and it still works whether you think about the 2 or the 5 or the 1. Again, it's all going to work. It's a question of how specific you want to be in the moment of hitting those chords. All right. So again, that was just playing the 2 to the 1, 2 to the 1, 2 to the 1. Another way to approach this would be to play this as the dominant chords going to the 1 chord. So I'm just going to play F sharp 7 going to B flat. I'm just going to play all the dominant chords, and it has a slightly different sound. It has a little, I find like it's a more modern sound. I don't mean modern better, but it sounds more maybe Michael Brecker-ish. Whereas when I play the 2 chord and the 5, I feel more in the like sort of Charlie Parker, Dexter Gordon world. If I just play dominant chords and take the 2s out, it does give you a slightly edgier sound, maybe. It feels a little bit boxier to me, or punchier, and it doesn't mean better or worse. It just means it feels different. So the other thing I like to do here is let's just play 2 5-1s, where I'm going to play the 2 chords. I'm going to go after the 5 chord as a bebop scale on its own, or just as a bebop scale on its own, and then I'm going to go to the 1 chord, and I'm going to try and sort of stay away from the root, at least on beat 1, you know. Right? Still slightly bright to me. That sound is still, it's still totally acceptable. But what we do in jazz, one of the things that I would say that is a little bit harder to do if you feel like you're ready for something more advanced is to sort of add the alterations of the dominant chord. So make it a dominant chord with flat 9 or sharp 9. So on the F sharp 7, I'm going to make it F sharp 7 altered, and I'm going to add the G and the A to it to make it a F sharp 7 altered instead of just being F sharp 7. Those alterations, the flat 9, sharp 9, flat 13, or sharp 11, that group of notes gives you a punchiness and an edginess that makes the chord, it just makes it richer or more dangerous and more, slightly just more dissonant. But it has a little more grit to it. It's harder to do, but think of all these dominant chords as altered chord dominants. On that last chord I played over F7, I played flat 9, 7, flat 13, sharp 9, all the way down to the third of the B flat major chord. I almost, in a sense, didn't play that F7. It was all the altered notes. It's a harder thing to do, but it is really rewarding because of the intensity that you get out of it. But so I think that's it for today, folks. Again, just to sum it up again, think of that A section as sort of a modal section. One chord, one dominant, up to 4, 4 minor, back to 1, 2 dominant, and then 2, 5, 2, 5, 1. Dig? The bridge, just think about going to those major chords first, add the 2 chord to that, add the dominant chord if you want to, and then make the dominant chords altered if you want to. What else? That's it for Cherokee, folks. Like, it's a fun tune to play over. It comes from your research, and you have to start to see the chords changing before you have any success with it. Let's see if I can play it for you a little bit up the tempo for 1 second. You hear how I'm heading for those notes that I talked to you about earlier. They have to be there, or else you have nothing in this song. Like, they really are the thing that holds you together, is your knowledge of these half notes, these sort of half steps going down. So look for that. And again, it all comes from slow research. It doesn't work fast. I can tell you that. It's all, everything I'm playing at that speed is trying to fall back to something I knew that I worked on at a slower tempo. So I hope that helps. And you're always welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks again.
You know, Dr. Carney, you said you said a bad word today.
What's that?
Patience, taking your time.
That's right.
Something that nobody wants to hear. But
Yeah.
man, I love the way you broke that down slowly and you showed us chord by chord the things to play. Stay away from the one if you can, and leave that third and fifth, and
Right.
just the different patterns, man. And it all makes sense. And I love it that they can always go back in the past archives and they can pause, play along. I mean, this is a powerful tool. And the way you explained it, that explains why your students are so great. And because they're understanding the science behind it. And still, like you said, you have to have some originality. We want to hear who you are, but man, get some understanding in this. So taking it slowly and looking at those chord changes and playing it with the actual backing tracks, I mean, that's powerful. When you get with a real rhythm section, hey, you're going to be more prepared, right?
Right. You've built some research, you have something to say on it because you've spent some time looking for the logic of the song, and that shows up, your interest in the song is what shows you that you can play. Like the original part is what I rarely teach that, I would say, because everybody brings their own style to it. But too oftentimes everybody thinks they got to go find their own voice. Like you mostly just have to learn to play, and and when you learn to play, your originality will find its way through all the time.
Yeah, I love that. That is great. I have to go ahead and tweet that. That was awesome. So I want to remind everybody, please, please, please share these awesome sessions that you're attending here at the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. I mean, these are tools, whether you're a pro or you're a beginner. I mean, you can pick up all these nuggets and apply it to your playing. So, and don't forget, if there's a topic that we've never covered, or maybe it's, you want to tell us how well you're enjoying Dr. Carney's presentations, you can always email us, and we love hearing from our listeners. You can email us at info@clearwaterjazz.com. We would love to hear from you. And then we're expecting you to see you on the next one, right, Dr. Carney?
That's right. That's right.
So, like what we always say around here, guys, until next time, I'm your host, Michael Carnodal. This has been Dr. Pete Carney. You'll see us out there at Tampa Bay and beyond on the stages, here educating. But until next time, everybody, keep it swinging and have an awesome day. See you on the next one.